Welcome back, everybody. We have week 1 tomorrow, and we have episode 20 of Everyone Hates the Commissioner starting right now. Dan, welcome back. How are you doing?
I am good. I am excited. Big game tomorrow. Um, Pleasantly hoping for a big season from our Packers, but no pressure. So it's going to be a fun year.
Yep. I'm gonna try to keep the expectations low with them, but still gonna have fun with it and try not to get too frustrated because our I think our definition of success this year is going to be a lot different than the last 20 years or so. So we'll have to kind of just relax a little bit and see if we have another franchise quarterback on our hands or not. But well, how are you doing? You're all recovered from the weekend?
I am. Yes, it was a big weekend. I forgot what happened though. Do you remember what happened?
I
Oh,
did.
that's
I
right. You
did.
got married.
I did. I did. Yeah, thank you to you for this wonderful cheesehead that is autographed by the owner and creator of the cheesehead. Appreciate that. So I gotta have to rep that here for a little bit, but yep, it was a great weekend, and it took us a couple days to recover, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Everyone that I talked to said it was one of the funnest weddings they've been to. Really good to see a lot of friends and family I haven't seen in a while. It was a blast. It was a good day.
It was fun. So, well, I think we're ready. Are you ready to dive right in? We're gonna do a quick kind of like a season review, not review, preview for well, you have some big news for us about now we have another Dynasty League to talk about and some potential extra guests. So but yeah, why don't you touch on that real quick, and then I'll jump into let's jump into kind of what your draft strategy was in this second league compared to, or maybe if if there was some big differences you had or comparisons that you had compared to our first draft.
Yeah, one league wasn't enough, so I figure why not have a second. So we've got some more friends to the north in that league. I figured if it's not broke, why fix it? So I tried going after the same kind of core players that I did in our league. Obviously, right now that's not exactly sitting well with me. That I have Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, and Jonathan Taylor in both leagues. Sounds like all three of them are going to be missing week 1. So but I still like the core of my team. My strategy really is to get a couple of those bell cow running backs and just kind of rely on them and then build pieces around it. And it obviously worked last year. Trying to do that now. The problem is all those guys are 1 year older. So
Mm-hmm.
with you, I know your strategy was a little bit different. You like to go young. So if you want to share maybe some moves that you made this offseason to get even younger.
Yeah, I really like, especially in Dynasty, trying to hit on some younger stars, and I feel like I did a good job with that. I have shares on in both leagues with Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb. I wasn't able to bring in Jamar Chase, so I could have that trio like I do in the 920 league. But that's right. I brought in T. Higgins. I actually went wide receiver really heavy early, the first 3 picks. So um, yeah, this the league that you started here. It's a little bit different. We have an extra wide receiver, so slot on there, including the 2 flexes. So I'm trying to make sure I was kind of, if you can find some plug and play guys and then you're good. Besides buys, we'll talk about week 7 another time. But but yeah, I found this a dynasty a sheet, kind of like a draft sheet, and I just try to take as many young players with a lot of upside as much as I could, and actually now I'm thinking about that. Look, I have a website that grades each team in terms of dynasty, not necessarily power rankings for each season. And you and I are both number 1 and 2 in both of our leagues, and one of us is 1 and the other one is 1. So we're doing a good job there. So
As it should be.
yeah, yep. But um, in terms of off-season moves and trying to get younger, I did make a big splash in the 920 league about a week before our rookie draft. I ended up trading Josh Jacobs, who I was and absolutely in love with last year. Obviously, the number 2 running back and the league leading in rushing yards. Christian Watson, love him too. And then I think first and Rashad White to get to that number 1 overall pick, and now I have my bell cow for the next 5 or 6 years, maybe hopefully longer. So I got Bijan. Look excited, very excited about that.
Yeah, your core is just crazy. I was showing it to my buddy at work when we were talking about our lineups this week. Obviously, I still love my team, but your team has the same potential as mine this year, but you're about 7 years younger per player. So it's pretty crazy, the different dynamic. Yeah, when you got Bijan, I was not thrilled. The asking price was just too much for me, where I didn't want to sacrifice as much as he was asking, but I felt like the pieces you moved, it was a little high, but it made sense, especially considering you still have Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, and CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
Why not go get a running back that you can just set and not have to worry about? And then obviously you picked up JK as well. So it's not like you gave up all those pieces just for Bijan. You got some other things moved in there too. And both of us still have a ton of draft capital in the next 2 years as well. So we both have flexibility to do a little buying and selling too.
Yep. I'm looking forward to that. I think I'm going to kind of wait a little closer to the trade deadline to kind of see what kind of how things play out and how I want to and go from there. I don't want to go too early. I mean, I threw a couple offers at you and for Travis Kelce, and I know that he wasn't wrapped in a box on Sunday for me to open up, but which is fine, I guess. But but it's so far. I mean, you never know, a knee injury like that could linger for a while this year. So it could have been where it worked out. You just gotta. I mean, that's fantasy football. That's just football in general, though. I mean, anything can happen at any time. So,
yeah.
And I think, and that was actually something I was going to we can talk about later, but I really think from what makes and breaks a team, especially in fantasy football, is winning the trades. And there's somebody that I want to talk about in a little bit about those trades. So,
I don't know who you could be. I don't know who you could mean.
Well, how about which is your favorite team in both of our leagues? And if you wouldn't mind just kind of running through at least their starting lineup, just to kind of see who your favorites are there. And maybe we'll have the same. Besides your own, of course.
Of course, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, my team, I still love it. I'm still optimistic, but there are a lot of questions popping up. So we talked about your team. I love your team. We didn't even talk about Joe Burrow that you have at quarterback, David Njoku at tight end, who I'm a big fan of. He's one of those very undervalued, like mid-tier tight ends. He's going to sneak a couple touchdowns. They're going to utilize him in the passing game. So I like your team a lot. Another team that I think has a really high ceiling, but also could bottom out if a couple things don't go right, and that's Jake. So he was really going to struggle at quarterback this year if somebody didn't work out. And that somebody is Jordan Love, who's looked really good in the preseason. I know that means nothing right now, but again, I think we're both optimistic about his potential. I do think he's going to be a very viable starting quarterback. He's got Austin Eckler, Isaiah Pacheco, completely stacked at wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Devontae Adams. So Devontae's a guy that I don't love as much anymore, but those 4 wide receivers are all top tier. And then he's got Mark Andrews, tight end 2, who could legitimately be tight end 1 this year. So if Jordan Love stays consistent and gives him a solid quarterback week to week, I really like Jake's potential to win it all this year. What is your thoughts in the 920 league?
I do like Jake, but like Jake's team a lot too. I agree 100%, kind of depending on the quarterback spot there. But he is getting a little older, as some of those guys. Austin Eckler, you're not sure how much tread he has on the tires. They really, really utilize him. They give him a lot of touches, and running backs, he can be done in a matter of just, sometimes it's just the wheels just fall off really, really quick there. Devontae's 30 years old. He does have a lot of good youthful players, but just to kind of a little, like I'm just talking about, I like those younger guys. But I think my favorite is in the 920 league is Stu. So he did well, Stu. He does a lot to change his team up over the course of it doesn't matter if it's a regular season or not. Um, but I think he pretty much his entire team changed from last year, which is really, really interesting, and it got a lot of potential. So he's got Justin Fields, Josh Jacobs, and Christian Watson from myself, Tony Pollard, I believe, from you, and then brought in DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, TJ Hawkinson, and then just recently brought in Keenan Allen, who I think has got one more good year in him, and then they're going to kind of pass. He's going to pass the keys over to Quentin Johnson as long as he can hang on to the damn football. But other than that, I mean, there's a lot of it's a good mix of youth and veterans, and I love TJ Hawkinson. That guy is a stud. He just signed a big contract, the biggest contract in tight end history for the NFL. So like that team a lot. And he, like I said, it looked absolutely nothing like this at the end of last season. So
I believe he said at your wedding that he has 0 players remaining from his original draft just a year ago.
That doesn't surprise me. Well,
And
what about
talking about trades, that was actually the only trade that I've regretted making, because I made a lot of offseason trades. I moved Saquon, I moved DK, Amari Cooper, Tony Pollard. I got Cooper Kupp, James Conner, Jonathan Taylor, a couple other pieces, picked up some draft picks. So I still like what I did, but I sold Tony Pollard way too cheap, because before the rookie draft, I just told myself that Jerry was going to trade up and go get Bijan, and Tony was going to be worthless. So I got a first rounder out of him while I thought I could get some value. Obviously, that didn't happen. Pollard looks like the sky is the limit for him this season, so I definitely undersold him. Stu is actually trying to sell him back to me for twice as much. So guy's crazy. But yeah, that was really the only trade that I regret. Obviously, if Cooper Kupp is hurt and Jonathan Taylor are hurt, it doesn't work out for me, but I still think in the moment it was the right thing to do. The Tony Pollard trade in the moment was definitely not the right thing to do, and we'll see how it goes this season.
and you made that before they cut Zeke, right?
It was right around the same time. I pretty much was assuming that Zeke was going to be gone. Even if he was there, he might get some goal line work. I figured they'd bring in a running back for some goal line work regardless, which they did in Ronald Jones. But I really felt like Jerry was going to go get Bijan with all the hype and all the talk. And really, if that happens, Tony Pollard is fairly non-existent this year. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, that was really the only one. But yeah, so going into our new league, I got a couple cousins on my dad's side, a couple friends from the Oshkosh and La Crosse area. So some teams in there, a lot of different dynamics. The people in our two leagues are pretty different. I would say the friends in your league are a little bit more chill. The friends in my league, they talk a little bit more. It's a little bit more smack talk. It's a little more chippy in there. So we'll see how this season goes. But whose team, other than mine, of course, is your favorite in the Fox Valley Fantasy League?
I really like, and I was going through all these earlier today, but I really like Ocho's team. Got a lot of I besides Deshaun Watson, not a big I don't think hey, we'll see what this year brings for him. I mean, if he came back to what he looked like a few years ago, that team could be really, really unstoppable. But with Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, who actually I traded him, Brandon Ayuk, I believe, DJ Moore, Dallas Goedert, Tyler Lockett, Travis Etienne, and a couple other good players. Like he's got Aaron Rodgers on the bench. I guess depending on your matchup, you might want to I would maybe consider starting him over Deshaun Watson, I guess, depending on how he looks. But and then Swift on the bench, George Pickens is on the bench. So he's got some good players. I really like that team, and it's young. It's got some young talent there. So,
and he worked the trades probably better than anyone I've seen in any of my leagues. We did a long draft for our rookie picks. he was swapping picks left and right, using the whole clock. He got a ton of depth on the bench. The only reason his team is not my favorite is I just don't think he has as high a ceiling as some other teams. Now, he's clearly going to make the playoffs because if he has an injury or two, he's going to be able to plug some new guys right in and really not lose a ton. I just feel like his ceiling's not going to be as high as somebody else's. Brandon Ayuk's ceiling, very limited with a healthy Debo and a healthy Kittle and a healthy CMC. Christian Kirk, his value is going to be limited with bringing in Calvin Ridley, and Lawrence loves to spread the ball around. DJ Moore, I love DJ Moore. I've always liked him in Carolina. He's going to be a big play guy. He's going to have some big games, but you really don't know the consistency with Fields. Tyler Lockett, every year undervalued, but when is he going to fall off? A lot of mouths to feed in Seattle. Travis Etienne, love him, huge talent, but they brought in Tank Bigsby. Again, I think the one guy to own on Jacksonville is Trevor Lawrence, and then maybe Calvin Ridley, but I just think that ball is going to get spread out way too much. So yeah, I definitely like his team. He's definitely going to be in the playoffs and making a push. But I feel like the highest ceiling is actually Lil Hooley. His team is just stacked from top to bottom. Jalen Hurts at quarterback. Obviously, you could argue his running backs are a little sketchy. You got James Conner, Najee Harris, Cam Akers, Ramondre Stevenson, Jamal Williams. But those are a lot of guys that are going to get heavy workloads, and they're all involved in the pass game. So even if their teams aren't going to be the best, like James Conner, Cam Akers, they're going to be on some rough offenses. They're going to be involved in the passing game, so they're really not coming out, whether they're winning or losing. But then his wide receivers are just stacked. I mentioned Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, Chris Godwin, who I really believe is the wide receiver to own in Tampa this year. And then he's got Dobbs on the bench, Gabe Davis on the bench, Traylon Burks, Sky Moore. And then he has Darren Waller at tight end, who also might only have a year or two left, but he has been the belle of the ball in the preseason, and he is looking like he is going to have a monster year. So I just think Hooley's ceiling is a little bit higher than Ocho's right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he might be a fringe playoff guy, like you said, but I mean, just kind of riding those wide receivers. But yeah, I mean, in terms of a lot of potential, he's definitely, I think he's there for sure. Sorry, I'm just still looking at his team. All right. Give me so how about you what would be your favorite when you're kind of talking about DJ Moore kind of switching teams in a new situation there, what would be your favorite offseason move for the NFL, like an NFL team, or compared to what we've done in fantasy?
Yeah, DJ Moore was a great signing for Chicago. They're trying to help Fields. If Fields is going to do it, he's got to do it this year and next. I do think he has a lot of potential. I know we had a lot of our guests on last year. Fields was a hot topic. You either believe in him or you don't. If he takes that next step as a passer, he's going to be a top 3, top 5 quarterback moving forward. I want to root for the guy, but then I don't because he's Ohio State and Chicago,
Yeah. That's just a double.
Yeah. But I like the guy. Good guy. I think DJ Moore was a great add for that team. He adds that deep ball presence. I really liked Miami going kind of all in. They picked up Jalen Ramsey. They picked up some extra pass rush, drafted Devin Achane. Tua looks like he's going to be healthy. Obviously, that's a big question mark, but they're making a push because if they don't win in the next 2 years, Miami is going to be in a world of hurt. But you know me, you're in it to win it. The Rams did it a couple of years ago, and it worked out for them with Von Miller and Odell Beckham and Matt Stafford. So I do believe, if everyone stays healthy on Miami, that team is going to be really, really difficult to beat. The problem with Miami, if they have an injury or two, or if Tua goes down, they're toast in that division. But I like what they did to make a push. And then I got to say it. I was going to save it for our Packers talk, but this guy, our dearly departed Aaron Rodgers, I'm wearing this as a final send-off for him. The Jets, man, that defense is nasty. If Breece Hall comes back decent this year, they picked up Dalvin Cook. So between the two, they've got a full running back. Brought in Lazard as a number 2 behind Garrett Wilson. really the only question mark is going to be that offensive line.
Yep.
If that offensive line can hang tough, I think Rodgers to the Jets could be a big deal. And we know as much as anybody, when Aaron Rodgers has a chip on his shoulder, he plays really good football. So we'll see how that goes in New York.
Yep. And on top of that, when he has a top 5, top 10 defense, which he only had one time in his career with the Green Bay Packers, and guess what happened that year?
Super
Ring baby. So I mean, he's got, like you said, he's got a ton of talent around him on offense, and he's got even more on the defensive side of the ball. So this is probably the first time in 10 or 11 years that the pressure isn't all on him. I don't feel like. I mean, yeah, there's obviously a lot of pressure being in New York and making that offense go and everything, but he doesn't need to have the best day every single time. That defense is going to pick him up a lot of times. So that's going to help him a lot more than even though he probably does have, he kind of started that decline a little bit, but he's still a hell of a football player. So I think, I think the Jets, and I mean, that was my number one, obviously that's kind of the elephant in the room with that one, but I think the Jets are going to have a really good season. That's just a really tough division, and it's going to be fun to watch those guys because that's just going to be a meat grinder with the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Doesn't matter if the other 3 teams look as good as they do. Patriots, the Bill Belichick, they always seem to be in the game and finding a way with that good defense. So that's going to be a really, really, really fun division to watch this year. So,
and I think I talked about it on the pod last year. I'm a true believer in culture, in the business that I run, in successful businesses, regardless of the industry and in professional sports. You talk about culture a lot. The Detroit Lions last year, why they were successful. They changed their front office. They said, we're going to change the way we do things. They brought in a head coach that changed the culture. He brought in guys that worked hard, and he brought in players. I think Rodgers' persona and attitude and the way he carries himself fits in a lot better with that Jets culture than it did towards the end of the Green Bay culture, where people kind of started to butt heads. Not saying one is better than the other, but you've got to have everyone in the same direction. And again, who knows if the wheels will fall off, but right now looks like everything's heading in the right direction for the Jets. So we'll see if they can keep that together. And then speaking of which, Detroit still might be that team to beat for Green Bay this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Minnesota is going to have another good year, but they won, I think, 8 games by less than 1 score. Was it less than 7 points, whatever the record was? Hey, that's just a lot of things just kind of falling into your lap. I mean, just getting lucky, whether it's a missed field goal or a made field goal at the end of the game. So I don't see them being able to do that, replicate that again next year. I mean, you don't see that very often, that you in a 1-score game 7 a team would have that many wins. I believe they were 8-0. I might be wrong on that, but it was something similar. So one of these this year, some of those games are going to start taking the ball's going to bounce the wrong way, and they're not going to have as good of a record. But I would agree.
They don't have the pieces where if something happens to a Justin Jefferson or a Kirk Cousins, that team is going to be in big trouble.
Yep, I agree. So what about your favorite moves? So I know that we didn't, I mean, I shouldn't say there wasn't any moves in the Fox Valley Fantasy League because Jesus Christ, there was more trades before the actual draft. This is just picks moving up and down and around that I think that we had all year involving players and picks. I was so blown away. I participated a little bit, but there was a lot going on, and I was like, holy cow. So, but in terms of kind of moves from having one team to like from last year to this year, who for the 920 league, who had the best or your favorite offseason moves kind of going into this year?
So it's actually crazy that I'm going to say this because, I'm a lot like Stu, and if I don't like something, I'm going to change it. I'm going to find a way to trade. I actually think the person who had the best offseason was somebody who just stood pat, and I talked about him already, and that's Jake. Jake had a lot of really good players that he could sell high. I threw him out some offers out there, and he just kind of stood pat, and it looks like his team is just really going to fall together really well last year. Just couldn't quite put it all together last year. but I think
Yeah,
him not making moves actually helped him.
so I actually needed to beat him in the last week of the regular season to get into the playoffs. And then when I did do that. And then I met up with him the very next week and beat him again. So I was razzing his ass pretty good about that last playoff season. So, but yeah,
And the other,
it does.
the other one I liked
No,
was actually Kai. Uh, Kai is picking up some really important draft capital,
yes,
and he's selling some players that really aren't going to help him in a couple years. He's keeping those guys who can work as a foundation for him later. Kai knows his team is really not going to compete this year, might not even compete next year, but he got so much draft capital and he still has those players that are going to be able to contribute in a couple years. So I think if he keeps doing that strategy, and obviously you got to guess right, right? I mean, you got to keep the right players, you got to get the right picks. But obviously his pick's going to be really high. He picked up M's pick, which should be really high. He's got Trevor Lawrence. He's got a couple other guys. So I like, even though he did some minimal movement, I thought it was going to be really important for him for the next 2 to 3 years.
yep. Yep, he did. So and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but I did really like what Stu did, especially his most recent trade last weekend. I'll just list off these guys just one more time. I mean, he picked up George Pickens this last weekend. Keenan Allen's going to be an immediate impact player. T.J. Hawkins, Justin Fields, Josh Jacobs, Christian Watson. All those guys have a lot of potential, obviously, besides Keenan Allen. But I think that when he rebuilt, I just wrote on when I did my notes here on my favorite offseason moves. I just wrote all of Stewart's trades because I think he won. I mean, granted, I was participating in that a little bit, but I think he won a lot of those trades this offseason. I think that's gonna kind of send him up this year up towards the top, and I think he's gonna sneak in. I think he's gonna make the playoffs this year. So
I'm gonna give him some razz because I know he's gonna watch this. He was talking smack about my team and how old and if I have some injuries. He pretty much mortgaged his future. He has no picks in 2024, which arguably is going to be the best draft.
Yep.
He has 1 second rounder in 2025. So he has one pick in the next 2 years. Now he has a very, very good bench. So he could always move pieces. And we know if anyone can move pieces, it's going to be Stu. So he'll make it work. He's got a couple of young guys in his bench that I really like. Sky Moore, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, George Pickens on his bench, Rashad White on his bench. So there's some pieces there. Again, I really like his team, but you and I think we both agree, we do not like to mortgage that much of our draft capital.
No.
My team is getting old, but I have 4 first-round picks next year. I have 2 more in 25, and I believe 2 in 26 on top of those other picks. So, we have some room to finagle, and Stu's going to have to move some players to get some draft capital back. But again, he played to win the game, and if he wins this year, I don't think he's going to care.
Nope, not one bit. So who would you say had the biggest jump this year from the end of last year to tomorrow in our league?
In fantasy?
Yep.
I still think Jake, because Jake was that middle tier team, and I think he's a top 3. And then I think Brian is probably going to take the biggest step back. He still has Justin Jefferson, right? But and then Jalen Hurts. But outside of that, I don't know if I see a ton of high potential. Brian Robinson, like the guy, but he's very capped. Jamal Williams, love the guy as a human being. He's hilarious. His fantasy potential, very capped. That's a crowded backfield. Mm-hmm. Aaron Jones, I think Aaron Jones is going to have a huge year if Green Bay uses him, but who knows how much longer he's going to be around. And then his bench just doesn't really do anything for me. No first-round pick either of the next 2 years. So Brian could still compete this year. He's still got some really good players. I just don't think I'm going to like his setup, after the season. He's going to probably have to move some pieces to get some draft capital back. So I think just because he got second last year, it leaves room for a bigger drop. Yep. And I think Jake's going to move up.
Okay. So I think the biggest jump for me was John. Obviously, he took last in the league, and then with getting at the start, I think he had 4 or 5 first-round picks, including 1, 3, and 4. Obviously, didn't end up using number 1, but he picked up a lot of very, very young players, and he used that first overall pick to kind of spin into some bigger players. So I'm sure all of our worldwide listeners remember us making fun of John how poor his team was last year. I'm not saying it's great, but it is looking a lot better than it did in the last year. Bringing in Lamar Jackson was a big piece who I think is going to have a really big year this year. And in terms of taking the biggest step back, and I know that you can't take too big of a step back when you're already 11th, but Emily, she's sold a lot of her pieces, and she already knows that she's not going to be participating too much this year. Well, not participating, but she's not uh going to be even close to making the playoffs, and she knows that. So, but she did pick up some draft capital, but in terms of players and where Kai, as you were talking about, Kai did bring in a lot of draft capital, and I think the right kind of draft capital. I think M took a big hit there, and I think poor Emily. I think she's be rounding up the bottom of the barrel here this year.
She picked up a ton of draft picks. I think she's got 9 or 10 in the next 2 years, so that's great. But I just did not like her moving that first round pick next year, because if all goes to how it looks right now, it's probably going to be John, Kai, and M in the bottom 3, or probably at least 2 of those. So Kai's got probably 2 of the top 3 picks, and M just trading that pick. That could be a Marvin Harrison Jr., that could be a Caleb Williams, that could be a Brock Bowers. I don't love it. I do like that she has Jahmyr Gibbs. She's got some pieces. She's got a lot of picks that she could package. But yeah, it's gonna be really tough for her to compete this year, and I think she's gonna have to try to move a couple pieces to kind of trade up for a guy or 2 next year. But I do like that she's active. That's the thing I love about this.
Absolutely.
League. The people who are doing well, they're still looking at how to get better. The people that aren't doing well, they're making pretty smart moves to try to, sell a little bit and plan for the future, which is what Dynasty is all about. That's what real life GMs have to do. So I think everybody has a good idea of what they want to do with their team, which is going to help us stay competitive. And obviously everybody knows if you're active and you're trying to stay competitive, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, 100%. I think that'll be really similar in the second league that we're in, because there's been a ton of activity over the last 5-6 months when you started this thing, and it's been pretty tough to follow. So so I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So I think I have one more. No, I don't have any more questions for you. Well, I do, but I was going to see if you wanted to dive into some Packers talk.
Yeah. Let's just start right out. Projection, where are we finishing in the division and what's our record?
I'm going to say 7-10. That's with us even having the easiest, I believe we have the easiest schedule in the league. But there's going to be some growing pains. I think we kind of went from one of the oldest rosters in the league to one of the youngest in a matter of an off season. So there's going to be a lot, and I just got a notification a little earlier that Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs might be out on Sunday because they might be banged up. So I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I think there's going to be flashes of some good, and our defense, well, we still have Joe Barry. So, I mean, I'm not expecting too much. What about you? Where do you think we're going to end up?
Yeah, I think, right around there. I think our coaching staff overall, and I think our talent on paper is too good to finish, 4-13, 5-12. I think 7-10 is a fair assessment. I'm optimistic, thinking we might be able to pull out a winning season at 9-8. I really wouldn't even be surprised if we could go 10-7, just because the division is really not that good. Our schedule is very, very easy, and we do have a lot of really good pieces. Rashawn Gary's coming back healthy. Christian Watson has looked really good. Romeo Doubs has looked really good. Jordan Love has looked really good. They picked up some depth on the offensive line. I still don't know how I feel about it, but I feel like we've got a lot of pieces in place at pretty much every position group to make us competitive. So that's where, and I think Jordan Love has had enough time where he's not going to completely lose us games. I think there's going to be a couple games that are going to be like, man, what was he doing? That was a rough one to watch, right? But I think overall he's going to play good enough to win some games, and we're going to be able to be competitive with that schedule. So I'm going to predict a 9-8 season. I'd be completely fine with a 7-10. Anything less than like 4 or 5 wins though is going to be alarm bells, because that usually means that your quarterback's not good enough to win you games.
Yep. And then we're going to be hoping that we could maybe package our 2 first-round picks next year to move up and take one of these top guys. That's kind of what I would do and see. But anyways, I'm not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. We haven't even played 1-minute football yet this Sunday.
I do think week 1 against an up-and-coming Bears team that's getting a lot of hype, week 1 is going to tell us a lot about the season. And I know we lost week 1 last year, was that the Saints last year or 2 years ago, and we got blown out?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh man, the season. And then the season wasn't like that. But I do think Chicago week 1 is going to be a good gauge for where we're at.
Yep, I would agree. So we kind of touched on the rest of the NFC. Kind of give me, and we talked about the Jets. Why don't we go through Obi's pick? Believe it or not, we're bringing back Obi's pick this year because we just loved it so much. And then we'll go with him, and then we'll kind of go from there on some, touch up some more NFL talk, and then we got some more predictions here for what we think is going to happen the rest of this year.
Yeah, and to our viewers, tell your friends, comment on YouTube. We're going to be doing some giveaways this year.
Oh yes, that's right.
So we're going to be talking some predictions for the season. We'll have a lot of new guests on this year. We might get some people from outside of the fantasy leagues. We're going to have some new games and some new skits this year, but we have to keep everybody's favorite skit with everybody's favorite good boy, right, Mr. Obi himself. So we will pull this up. Now, let me preface this by saying to our new viewers, we are not in any way telling you to follow Obi when it comes to gambling. Obi would have lost you some money last year if you would have listened to him. Obi, our good boy, went 5-13 last year. So let's hope he does a little bit better this season.
We're back. Welcome back to football. We have a great week 1 Thursday night matchup with some high scoring potential. Obi is back for a second season. Hopefully you have a little bit better luck this year, buddy. Let's see who you got. Come here. And he's going with the Detroit Lions, the underdog. Ooh.
So, like you were saying, that we probably, if you were a betting man, probably not take Obi's advice. And there was times in our pick'em league that I would actually whatever he picked, I usually went against, because it was especially if the team that he took was the favorite. I mean, because it was rough there for a little while. But so Obs, he took the Detroit Lions. I believe they're about 2.5, 3.5 point dogs against the Chiefs. And I'm sure that the Travis Kelce thing probably impacted that for sure. But how do you feel about that game tomorrow night?
I am incredibly excited. I have been a Chiefs fan since Andy Reid went there. I was a huge Patrick Mahomes fan out of college. That was a match made in heaven. So the Chiefs have always been a favorite team of mine, obviously behind the Green Bay Packers. I've always been a Detroit Lions fan from the days of Barry Sanders and then Calvin Johnson. Kind of like being a Brewers fan growing up, and you kind of root for the Cubs because they were always so bad all those years, and they're your neighbor to the south. And then once they win, it's like, I'm not rooting for you anymore.
Yep.
I'm still rooting for the Lions. If they beat us again this year, then maybe I'll change a little bit. But these are 2 of my favorite teams. I still think Kansas City is the team to beat until somebody proves me otherwise. Detroit, I love Motor City Dan Campbell. I love the Sun God and Amon-Ra. I like what that team is doing. I think it's a coin flip if Kelce doesn't play, but I am not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes at home in Arrowhead on week 1. I just don't see them letting down. And Detroit really only has Amon-Ra right now. We'll see how Gibbs and David Montgomery work, but that's 2 new players. Who knows how Jared Goff is going to gel with some other wide receivers. And I think even though Detroit's defense is going to be a little bit better, I don't know how they're going to be able to keep up with Kansas City. So I'm going to pick Kansas City in a close one, but I do think they will win at home.
You think they're going to cover? I mean, I can't remember exactly what that
Yeah.
spread is, but I believe it was 3.5. Let me got it up here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 6.5. Do you think they're going to cover that 6.5?
Yeah. So they were 6.5. They came down to 5 yesterday with the Kelsey news. So that 5-6, I do think they will win by a touchdown, maybe 10. I think Detroit's going to make it a fun game. Detroit's definitely going to score, especially with Chris Jones not in. They're not going to get that same pass rush. So I'm not thinking it's going to be a 40-40 game, like Bills Bengals, but I could see like a 27-20 game, maybe a 31-24 game. Yeah, so I think the Chiefs are going to win by about 1 score, maybe 10.
Yeah, I agree 100% that the Chiefs are going to pull this one out. I don't think Detroit's got enough weapons on the outside yet. And they definitely have a lot of potential, but Jameson Williams being out doesn't help any, and they're going to be able to focus all of their attention on Amon-Ra. And like you said, you don't really know what's going to happen with Gibbs and Montgomery, and they may have some success running the football tomorrow night without having Chris Jones out there, and that could slow the game down a little bit. Which is, if you're playing against Patrick Mahomes, by all means, if you can run the football, you do so. Keep the ball out of his hands, which I think that is going to be their go-to tomorrow night. They can't run the ball, then I think they're in trouble. But if they can, I think they'll be able to keep it relatively close. But they had a lot of success running the football last year, and they can kind of keep that going. Then I think it should be a little bit of a closer game. Yeah. So, but
I definitely think they're going to come out with a lot of Montgomery and Gibbs to start. Yeah. Obviously, Amon-Ra is still going to be the guy. Kansas City's defense really is not a top tier defense, especially without Chris Jones. So Detroit could put up some points. Detroit was a fantastic offense last year. I believe they ranked in the top 3 or 4 of offensive efficiency. I'm really curious to see how Jahmyr Gibbs plays. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's going to be really dynamic. So I'm curious to see how creative they get. But to your point, I just don't know if they have enough weapons right now outside of Amon-Ra. And it's still Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
It is.
So
it sure
Nick's
is.
going to get a couple of these tomorrow. His favorite player, Patrick Mahomes, calling the flag.
Did you watch the quarterback series on Netflix?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool, especially 3 very different quarterbacks to follow around with Kirk and Mariota and Mahomes. Yeah, it was fun. I've not been able to watch Hard Knocks yet this year.
Oh.
I was a huge fan of the Lions Hard Knocks last year. I definitely got to get the new Max. My HBO subscription ended when they changed over to Max. I just haven't done it. So I'll definitely be watching some Hard Knocks and getting caught up before Sunday.
Yeah, I won't ruin anything for you, but that just made it hurt. That made it hurt even worse, not having that's seeing Aaron Rodgers on another team, man. It did. I mean, seems like a cool cat. And I understand that it's probably time for both sides to go their separate ways, but it's still it didn't help seeing him on a on a different team. But
you see the green and white, and you're like, wait, what is missing?
Yes,
it just looks off. Yeah, he's got the weird looking helmet this year. I don't know, but I know we're going to get into some talk about predictions. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a pretty big year.
I think you will too. So did you also see, we were talking briefly about big contracts. Nick Bosa signed a massive deal this afternoon, 5 years, $170 million. That's just absurd. It's at $34 million a year for him. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. He probably should be up there as the highest paid defensive player. That guy is incredible. They have a good matchup this weekend in Pittsburgh. That'll be a really interesting one. That started out at 3.5 dogs for the Steelers at home.
That spread has gone down, by the way. San Francisco is down to -1.5. When you look at that matchup, you think San Francisco is clearly the better team. I am telling people out there, be careful. Vegas knows what they're doing. I'm still picking the Niners. I'm still picking the Niners to cover. And they could win by 30, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm telling you, be careful, because when that spread's going down and it seems so obviously wrong.
Yep.
There's
they know what's going
out there that know way more than you and I. And I think the biggest question mark is people want to see what's going to happen with Brock Purdy.
Yep, 100%. Is that elbow healed?
We all know if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win. And Pittsburgh is going to come out. Kenny Pickett's improved. They've got 2 running backs now with Najee and Jalen Warren. They've got all those weapons on the outside. One of the best coaching staffs in the National Football League with Mike Tomlin. You got a great defense. I'm telling you, if Purdy comes out and plays, San Fran should handle that game no problem, especially with that defense. But it's not as obvious as you think.
Yep. Well, since we're talking about some good matchups here, why don't you give me? We're going to bring this back as our lock and upset. That's always a fun segment. So, who do you got a lock this weekend?
Yeah, the spreads. It's the highest spread this week. It's 9.5. I saw some sites as high as 10.5. But give me Baltimore over Houston every day of the week. Yep. I do think Houston's got a lot of young pieces that they're trying to build the right way. I think DeMeco Ryans is going to be a really good head coach. I think he's going to fit that culture that they're trying to build there. You got a young stud in Will Anderson on defense, a lot of young wide receivers. But Baltimore looks like an absolute offensive juggernaut right now. Curious to see how the offense plays. But even if Lamar's not throwing the ball that well, Baltimore's still going to be able to run. They're still going to be able to make big plays. And I just don't see Houston being able to keep up. So I've got Baltimore as a lock in week 1.
Yep, that was my backup for sure. I mean, that's about as easy as it gets. But my other one, so this is it's a little makes you kind of wonder, because we kind of alluded to this wonderful defensive coach earlier, but I'm going to take the Eagles over the Patriots. They are on the road in New England, but I think they're going to come out angry and pissed after how that Super Bowl ended up. If they didn't even get a chance, all it kind of came down to a field goal at the end. Great game last year at the Super Bowl. But I think they're going to come out. I don't think there's going to be a Super Bowl hangover for these guys. I think they're going to have another really, really good year, and they're going to come out firing. So that's going to be my lock this week. But Baltimore was my backup in case you didn't take them. So in terms of upset, do you got a backup, or do you have 2 of them? Okay. All right, I want you go first.
No, Philly. So that's another one. I love that pick. It's actually one of my favorite picks this week. -4.5. Everyone looks at it and they're like, man, 4.5. It's that weird number. Yep. Around the road in New England, Bill Belichick. They lost some pieces on defense. I don't see how in any reality New England is going to be able to keep up with Philadelphia.
No.
New England's defense is extremely underrated. We all know they're very well coached. But they've got a couple new pieces in New England as well. And when you give me Jalen Hurts and a healthy Dallas Goedert with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, that offensive line, ton of running backs with that defensive front 7, I think it's going to be a long night for New England. I could see Philly winning that game by 20 and running away with it. So I really like that play. As far as upsets, I'm going to go a little crazy. I'm going to pick against a team that is getting a lot of buzz in their division, but I think they're a little overrated. And I'm going to pick a team that everyone is kind of knocking on. I'm going to pick the Tennessee Titans over the New Orleans Saints.
Ooh,
and I'm a Saints fan. I'm a big Chris Olave guy. Carr has always been an all right guy. But I think Tennessee getting that +3.5 to cover, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, you've got a healthy Derrick Henry. That defense is still good. Mike Vrabel is as good as they come. I'm going to take the Titans on the road in kind of a bold upset.
Interesting. So I have a couple here that I talked about that the Pittsburgh over San Fran, and I agree 100%. Especially this was, if you told me Nick Bosa wasn't playing and Brock Purdy wasn't coming in healthy, I think that would make things a lot more interesting. But now that Nick Bosa is officially back, and he's going to come back ready, like that guy is a workout freak. I mean, if somebody can take off the whole offseason or away from their team and come back and play like he didn't miss a beat, I feel like he's probably that guy. But the other one that I really like is, and it's going to be a really interesting to watch this team this year after the kind of the shit show last year. But I'm going to take the Las Vegas Raiders. They're a 3.5-point dogs against a divisional opponent in the Denver Broncos. So I think Jimmy G is Jimmy G. He's not going to flash you with really great numbers, but the guy still, I mean, he still knows how to win, and he still he doesn't put up really flashy Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers numbers, nothing like that, but he does what needs to be done to win. And I still just don't know what is going on with the Broncos and Sean Payton. I mean, he just keeps coming out with a new quote, something. He's in the media. Thank you, Obi. Look at that. Obi brought me a vodka seltzer. That was very nice of him. But you just never know what's going on in that locker room when he keeps showing up in the news. Like, I think this recent one was talking to Russell Wilson, quit kissing babies. You're not trying to be voted into the public office or the president or something. That's just kind of weird. Something weird's going on there. So I think the Raiders might sneak this one out. And divisional games, they're always tough, and they're always close.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that pick, but I get what you're saying. Sean Payton has really turned on me. I used to be a big Saints fan with Drew Brees, prime Jimmy Graham. I would not want to play for Sean Payton.
No, I don't think I would either.
I understand what he's doing. Russell Wilson is as big a bit to blame for the failures last year with his posse and his specialty coaches and his own offices and doing his own thing. You and I have talked about it all last year. We're not big Russell Wilson fans, even though he played for the Badgers, loved him on the Badgers. He tries to be a good guy. I'll give him that. He's just, you said the word corny. I don't know how that team is going to look, but I will tell you why Las Vegas is going to lose. They want Caleb Williams so bad.
Oh no.
I'm telling you right now, if any team is gonna lose on purpose outside of Arizona, it's Las Vegas, and I don't want to go and say that. I would not be surprised if Mark Davis told Josh McDaniel and said, "Hey, I understand you want to win. You're a head coach. Your job is to win games. I'm not going to put this year on you. Lose a couple games for me. Let's bring in a new quarterback, and then let's see how you do with him." I would not be shocked if that's kind of an under the desk conversation. And I just think Denver's going to have too many more pieces of talent on both sides of the ball, including one of my breakout players this year that we'll talk about later. But division game could go either way.
Yeah. So when you were just talking about that, do you think that the Cardinals are trying to lose games? Do you think were you saying that when you say that, do you think they're ready to move on from Kyler Murray?
It sure seems like it. The whole script for that team flipped in the last year. From they extended Kingsbury, they're working with Murray on his offseason stuff. They were signing all these weapons, right? They brought in Hopkins. They signed all these new guys, brought in all this draft capital, and now it's like Kingsbury's out. They're keeping Murray out. Sounds like he actually is really injured. But now they're selling more pieces. They just traded a former number 1 pick for, I believe they got a 6th round pick for him. I mean, they're cleaning house. They have James Conner, who I love, but I mean, James Conner's not going to be doing anything in the next year or two. That team on paper is rough.
Yeah.
I mean, at least Las Vegas has, Max Crosby and Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, right? They've got some pieces. Arizona has nothing. Mm-hmm. I mean, who do they have? Marquise Brown?
And I believe that they picked up an extra 1st round pick this year when they were the 2nd overall pick, and they moved back with Houston, I believe. So, it would have been 3rd. Mm-hmm. 2nd or 3rd. It was 3rd, I believe. So then they were able to move up to take that pass rusher out of Alabama, but Willer Anderson Jr.
They're projected to have the top 2 picks next year.
Oh,
and you could go Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. and hit the reset button.
Do you think the Texans are going to be that bad?
I think they're going to be rough, but I think they're going to win some games. The division's not good. D'Amico Ryans is building a strong team. They're going to run the ball. Damian Pierce. who you had in fantasy, I still think he's a solid guy. He runs hard. They got some young pieces. They got a couple guys on defense. Not saying they're going to win 6, 7, 8 games, but I think they're going to win more games than Arizona and Las Vegas.
Okay. Well, what do you think? We do some projections on some awards, some preseason awards.
Yeah. Do you want to go straight for the? Well, no. Let's start small. Let's keep our projections, our Super Bowl projections at the end.
Yes.
Rookie of the year. Who
Yep.
do you have for offensive, defensive rookie of the year?
Ooh, well, I don't want to take this away from anybody because I'm sure that this is a really sneaky pick. Not very many people are going to think about this guy when he comes to offensive rookie of the year. So don't let me just knock you out of your chair when I say this. I'm going to go with Bijan Robinson.
Interesting pick.
Yeah, right. The guy is, as I said, coming out a generational talent at running back. And then not to mention when you see these videos of them splitting him outside, and then some of these moves that he's putting on the DBs and safeties and linebackers on route running, I think he's just gonna. I'm not saying we're in the news today. Jamar Gibbs. He wanted to have He wanted to have 1,000 yards rushing and 500 yards receiving, which I think that could be easily be done for a guy like that. I think they're going to give him plenty of opportunities, but I don't see how Bijan won't have 12 or 13 yards, 100 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns, and probably close to another 500 yards receiving with him being there with him. I think they're going to try to utilize him as much as possible, being on a rookie contract and the talent that he has. I think they're going to try to get the ball in his hands as much as possible this year. So, barring any injuries, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have an outstanding rookie season as well. Don't get me wrong, but I'm going to go with the obvious pick here and on the offensive rookie of the year.
I don't know how you can really argue against that. I'll give you that one because you have him on your roster. I will go with the guy that just has the potential. I don't necessarily think he's going to quite put it together in year one on this team because it's a shit show. But I'll go with Anthony Richardson just because of the ceiling is so high. If he does figure it out, they've got some decent weapons there in Indy. I don't know how they haven't figured out the Jonathan Taylor thing. I think that's embarrassing as a franchise.
Oh, yeah.
The way Jim Irsay handled that, honestly.
And talking about – go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish.
You're good. Just with the Jonathan Taylor contract, I don't know how you don't make that happen. You've got to help your rookie quarterback. You've got your guy who's going to be a franchise guy. I was a big doubter of him coming out, after the 1 year limited reps, freak athlete, but saw a lot of really bad balls, saw some really poor decision making. But the more you watch this guy, you see that electricity, and he really starts to remind me more of like a Michael Vick, of a Lamar Jackson. So if he figures it out, and he's actually a higher character guy than I thought he was too, coming out of Florida. So I'm rooting for the guy, and I just think his ceiling could be even higher than Bijan's.
Yep.
I think he's a dark horse. I think Bijan's going to run away with it, literally. But yeah, I'd go AR.
Yeah, he is a very, very interesting rookie this year too. I agree. You think about all these quarterbacks that are coming out of college now that are having immediate success is 3 or 4 year starters. Okay, guys that have been playing a lot of football, and Anthony Richardson hasn't played a lot of football. So I agree 100%. The physical, the strengths is unbelievable, but I'm just a little nervous that he's not going to be able to keep up with the NFL speed here for this first year. And then hopefully it doesn't get to him mentally, because then that's usually when those guys kind of just start falling apart. But I think he has all the potential in the world. Like you said, it's just a matter of if they can put the right pieces around him, which is why you pay the superstar running back. Give them 3. I understand that Jim Irsay doesn't want to pay anybody on that team after the abysmal year that they had last year. I get it to a point, but when you have a star running back that you can hand the ball off and take a lot of the pressure off, you have a quarterback on a rookie contract for at least the next 5 years, right? So, or at least 4 years with the 5th year option. just give Jonathan Taylor. You have him on his you have him on his rookie contract yet. Sign him to a 3-year deal. Let's just say Richardson doesn't work out. Then you can lose him at the same time in 3 years, and then your hands are washed with it. It's done. I mean, I don't get it. I'm all on board there with you. Jim Irsay is this pig-headed, just doesn't know. I just like it. Something doesn't click there. You think if you spent the draft capital on a quarterback, which you've been waiting to do for years since Andrew Luck retired, right? They've been doing this, picking people up off the street, right? These older quarterbacks, these veterans, just kind of plug and play just to, let's see what happens. It clearly hasn't worked. So I think it's just a really foolish move that they're not putting the best players around Anthony Richardson to succeed right off the bat. So
you could make the argument that Indianapolis, if you take away them just being able to land Peyton Manning, and Jim Irsay was not the reason they got Peyton Manning. Their GM was the reason that they got Peyton Manning. He did all the work to get it. You take Peyton Manning away from that team, the Colts have been just a terrible franchise. Terrible franchise. Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, 2 obvious draft picks, right? Outside of that, what have they done?
Yeah,
They let Marshall Faulk go in free agency, Edgerrin James go in free agency. We all agree you're not going to overpay a running back $20-25 million a year, but when these tight ends, like no knock on Cole Kmet, 4 years for $50 million.
Oh yeah, you can give that.
And guys like Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs can't get that. It blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. I'm not paying a running back $25 million a year, but you got a Jonathan Taylor at 23, 24 years old. Man, It's crazy. But yeah, Anthony Richardson, ton of talent. He's going to have a ton of running yards. We'll see if he can be consistent on the passing game, but he's got some good targets.
You have an honorable mention on offense? There's a guy that sticks out to me.
My favorite player in the whole class, I would actually pick as my offensive rookie there, but he's dealing with an injury. He's going to be out. Jackson Smith-Njigba. I'm a big, big believer in him. I actually messed up. I had the 102 in our rookie draft. I told myself, no matter what happens, I'm taking Jackson Smith because obviously Bijan's going 1. I don't care where he gets drafted. I don't care who his quarterback is. I'm picking the talent. And then I traded the pick away before the draft. But I think he's the real deal. I think he's going to fit in with Seattle. It's going to be a lot of mouths to feed still. And then obviously he's dealing with the wrist injury now. So I think it's going to be too much to overcome for rookie of the year, but really, really bright future for that guy.
I really think staying in the same position, I think Jordan Aston's going to have a really good year this year because Minnesota is one of those offenses that you've seen the past 3-4 years that, granted, there's been some different coaches, but they really need a good number 2. And now that they let Thielen walk, Stephon Diggs isn't there. I really think that Jordan Aston's will kind of walk in and take it by the storm, and he's going to help out Justin Jefferson. So I think he's going to have a really. I mean, Justin Jefferson deserves practically the Calvin Johnson treatment. So just it's ridiculous. So it's going to open some things up for him. So I think he's going to have a really good year as well.
And that offensive coordinator knows how to utilize the 2 and 3 wide receiver. So yeah, if they see that Jefferson is just getting completely overloaded, you're going to see a lot of KJ Osborne who's flying under the radar, Jordan Addison, and obviously Hawkinson. So that offense, if a healthy Kirk Cousins, they're going to be tough. And I agree. I think he's a good player. We don't have bust predictions on here, but I know I've told you this before. Quentin Johnson.
Yep.
I think he's the bust. I think he's the bust of the draft class. Doesn't have the hands, doesn't have the route running. Freak athlete, top speed, big body. In the NFL, man, that just does not get it done.
Nope, I agree.
I know the outlook with the Chargers and Herbert, it makes a lot of sense, but I don't think he's as good as Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So I just see him being a bust.
How early would you have taken him though, or how late, I guess, however you want to look at it, if he was available? Like where would you actually start considering him in a 3-round rookie draft? And like we've been doing this dynasty, where would you actually be like, all right, I think I'll take him here? Like where about would you think you would have done that?
I actually felt like where he went in our draft, because I thought he was going to go sooner, and he fell to, I believe, the 109. I didn't hate that pick because I believe M took him. She got Gibbs at 102, and then went with Quentin. I didn't hate that pick just because of the potential. He is that freak athlete. He is in a great offense with a young quarterback that has proven that he can keep multiple viable fantasy wide receivers. So I think where she took him made a lot of sense for her. High risk, high reward. I think there was maybe one or two guys still there that I think I would have grabbed before him, but I don't think the 109 was that terrible. I believe a lot of people that I was looking at online and reporters had him projected 104, 105.
Yeah.
No chance. No chance. Not in any format would I have taken him at 104, 105.
Yep, I agree 100%. So, defensive rookies of the year, you got a guy in mind?
Yeah, you could go with the obvious Will Anderson, who we talked about. The Texans traded up to get at number 2. Guy's great. I think he's going to be a stud Pro Bowler. But I'm going to go. This isn't really a sleeper because he was taken 5th overall. But if you think of coaching staffs and defenses, who has always been to coach up D-backs as good as anybody else? Seattle Seahawks.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And they drafted Devin Witherspoon at corner with the number 5 pick. And reports out of camp are that he is going one-on-one with Lockett, with DK, and with JSN. And with that coaching staff, who has always developed defensive backs really well, I think Devin Witherspoon's got a really good chance to win Defensive Player of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, excuse me. Not Defensive Player of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that was, I mean, clearly Will Anderson is probably the best bet. I've heard some good things of Gonzalez. I can't remember what his first name is, that DB that the Patriots took. And I think they usually do a good job when they take a defensive back early. So you're gonna keep an eye out on him. I think all of us that don the green and gold want to say Lucas Van Ness, but I think he's gonna be a year or two out before he starts making some impact. But there's a lot of really, really good edge rushers coming out of this draft this year. And, you're going to talk about Will McDonald, who went to the New York Jets. I mean, Nolan Ryan, Georgia.
Yeah.
Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to be an interesting, he practically got the whole Georgia defense on the Philly. And don't forget about Jalen Carter, who the Eagles took right before Chicago, and I think that would have been a really, really Chicago pick had he been there. I think they did a good job taking that tackle out of Georgia. They definitely needed some offensive line help, but I think they were talking about him being the best player in the draft overall over all the running or quarterbacks, everything. So them getting him at 10, I know there's some character issues kind of coming out at the end of the year at the end of his college year, but that guy, is as good as ever. Could be one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So I think he's going to have some serious potential too. It's not to mention he has the talent around him to do it. He's not just out there just kind of starting from with, everybody can double team him. He's got a lot of talent around him. So,
and if there's a defensive coach or system that can coach him up outside of New England, it would be Philadelphia.
Yep. I agree. 100%.
They've got pieces around him. He doesn't have to be the go-to guy, but just he's got that Aaron Donald. I hate to compare anybody to Aaron Donald, but he's got that freak athleticism like Aaron Donald, that freak size and strength. Yeah, that was such a Philly pick. Philly they're so stacked.
They don't ever make a mistake in the draft, it seems. It's like they just and this is what you need to do when you're at the top, is keep taking best available. But it just seems like a lot of these teams are just letting these guys slide down for. Obviously there's character issues with some of these guys. I understand that you want to make sure you get the right guy.
Some teams don't have the culture or the coaching staff that can handle those personalities, and some teams do. Bill Belichick can. Mike Tomlin can. I believe Nick Sirianni can. Those teams can do that,
Yep. And they just keep taking the best available, and they just keep winning, man. They're going to be good for a long, long time.
Yeah. So is he going to be your pick for Defensive Rookie of the Year?
I'm going to go with him.
Okay.
Jalen Carter.
All right. What about Comeback Player of the Year? Are we just going to agree that's DeMar Hamlin? Let's put a bow on it and welcome him back to the league.
I think it would be a really good story. But a guy that probably he's not going to put up the big numbers if you want. I mean, that'll make a really good NFL story. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that that would be a really good bet. But he's not. I mean, he's never really been like a top tier player that's going to be, if you know what I'm saying. So I mean, I've heard a lot of rumors about some of these guys coming back and come back, but a lot of them are these guys that are hurt last year. A lot of them are coming off of ACLs, and you know how I feel about players coming off of ACLs on their second year. You never really know them. They don't test that knee. They don't trust the knee. But I do think Breece Hall is going to have a good second half of this year, and if there's going to be an impactful player that comes off of a pretty tough injury, I think I'm going to go with Breece Hall.
And the great thing with that is the Jets, with picking up Dalvin Cook, they don't have to force him back.
Yep.
They can gradually bring him along. Like I said, because Dalvin Cook probably isn't going to be healthy all year.
No,
not if he was a 3-down feature running back. I just don't think he can keep up. So the Jets have themselves two very, very talented running backs who, at the end of the day, one of them should be healthy. One probably in the first half, one probably in the second half. And Dalvin Cook made a ton of sense for the Jets. It was like perfect setting. We are both very big Breece Hall fans. Even though Bo drafted him and I wanted to root against them, the guy is just a great talent, So, yeah, I don't hate on that pick.
And don't forget, I mean, they have Michael Carter sitting back there too, who's not that bad and was a second or third round pick just a couple years ago. So they have a lot of talent in that running back room, and if they need somebody to kind of just hold the fort for a little bit till Breece comes back healthy, the Jets can do it.
And if you think Aaron Rodgers is going to just turn around and hand the ball off 40 times, you're in for a rude awakening. That is not going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. So what about you?
I'm just going to take DeMar Hamlin. The story, there's not really a top tier player that was injured that's coming back that I think is going to make that huge of an impact. I just think it's a cool story, and it'll be great to see him back on the field.
Yeah, for sure.
But what about the big boy award, MVP?
Well, how about oh yeah, that is. Yep. Nope. You're right. So when it comes to MVP, I mean, I don't want to say it, and I think, but I mean, I don't. If I'm a betting man, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to be about as good as it gets. I think they didn't lose anybody from last year in terms of weapons. They only gained one, and I understand that they're going to bring him along slowly, but Tony's going to be healthy. Sky Moore, everybody's loving Sky Moore. It's not like they lost to Tyreek Hill this year, and the guy still went out and won the MVP after they lost him. So I think he's going to be the betting favorite. I'm not saying I love to say it, but if I'm trying to be right here in 4 months, I'm gonna go with him.
I did not expect that out of you.
I know.
I was expecting more of a dark horse pick. I'm going to go with the guy who made huge strides last year, and this is going to be a precursor to another guy I'm going to talk about in a little bit here, but a huge guy that made a big jump due to coaching. From Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence made a huge jump from year 1 to 2, and the Calvin Ridley train is at full steam. So I am taking Trevor Lawrence in a fully loaded offense with Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, a solid offensive line, and a really, really smart head coach and offensive coordinator. Also, my bold prediction, Trevor Lawrence will win MVP and finish with 42 or more total touchdowns between passing and rushing this year.
See that happening. That guy's a stud.
That will, when they now also remember their division is the weakest in football, arguably with the NFC South. They also play the NFC South this year, so they get Tampa, Carolina, Atlanta. They get to play against that division as well. Now they do have some really tough out-of-division games at Buffalo versus Kansas City versus Baltimore versus San Fran. So they get the cupcake AFC South, but then they get 4 of the best teams outside of that. And if Jacksonville can go 12-5 this year and win the South, I think Trevor Lawrence is gonna win the MVP.
That's a really good. I never thought about him. And actually, while you were talking about this, I might have to change my comeback player of the year award. I think there's a guy that's gonna have an even better year, and I just, for whatever reason, he didn't cross my mind.
Calvin Ridley?
No, I actually think he's gonna have a good year too. But I'm not just trying to say this because I just picked him up in the offseason, but I really do think that J.K. Dobbins is gonna have a really, really good year. He's on a contract year. He's healthy for the first time. The guy gets 5.6 yards per carry when he does touch the ball. They have a new offensive coordinator, so I do think that he's going to have a good year. So I guess maybe put me down for both, and we'll see what happens. But
Better odds.
yeah, that's right. But I agree. Trevor Lawrence, I do. I'm a big Trevor Lawrence honk. And I just was telling John just last week, and I said, if we were talking about trades that we did make, and you want to win the trades that you do make, right? And that'll take you to the next step, and that kind of lays everything out for you in terms of fantasy. And then I might have brought this up last year on the podcast, but one trade that I wish I would have made, which was offered to me, was I would be sending a first round pick and Rachaad White for Trevor Lawrence and George Pickens. I fucked up big time there. And I was hanging on to those first round picks, like just hanging on to them so tight because I didn't want to lose them. But and this was before Trevor Lawrence kind of took that next step in like week 7-ish, around there, where they started winning. They went on that big winning streak. But that's one where I'm still kicking myself. And I know that I have Joe Burrow, but imagine what you can spin Trevor Lawrence into. You can spin him into a lot more than a first round pick and Rachaad White.
You could probably spin him over my way for sure.
But
I'm starting Aaron Rodgers again this year. I'll take one more year of him.
Oh yeah, I would. I mean, they have a lot of weapons over there. They did end up keeping Cobb, Lazard, Garrett Wilson. I'm going to be gushing over him all year long. I think that guy's going to have a monster year this year too. So it'll be fun watching them. Not to mention, just because he's been our quarterback for so long, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on those guys.
Yeah. All right, one more before Super Bowl. Most improved. I don't know if we talked about this in our pre-call, so I'll give you a little minute. So I'll go first. And a guy that I have been a big fan of since college. He was projected to be a first-round pick, and then he lost all of his weapons before his junior year, and he kind of struggled, and he fell to, I believe, the 4th or 5th round pick, or 4th or 5th round in the draft. Going to be a second year for this guy on a team that's getting a lot of buzz, and that's Sam Howell. I actually picked him up on free agency in our league. He got Eric Bieniemy as a new offensive coordinator from Kansas City. You can say that he rubs players the wrong way because he's a little abrasive, a little tough, but the guy is just a fantastic offensive mind. He's extremely creative. Sam Howell has all the attributes of a top-tier quarterback. He's extremely smart. He can scramble. He's got some speed. He's got a big arm. And most importantly, he's got a lot of weapons in Washington. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, 2 tight ends who fly under the radar. They're not going to blow your socks off with Logan and Turner. But I think both of those guys, and then you combine a really good backfield with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Again, no one's going to knock your socks off, but they're both really good. I think in that offensive scheme with Eric Bieniemy, Sam Howell could be in for a pretty big season.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I've been hearing some good things about him too. He's never really been on my radar in terms of picking up or anything, but we'll see how he does. I never thought about him. I guess I was thinking about it just a little bit. There is one guy who I think he had a productive rookie season, but it didn't really blow you away. But somebody who I think is going to come in this year and have a big impact, and that's James Cook. And we were talking about Delvin before, but his little brother James, I think he's going to have a really good year. They're going to use him a lot out of the backfield, and they're going to use him in the passing game a lot too. So I think he's going to have a really solid year. That Buffalo Bills offense is going to be a sight to see, I think, for or this year for sure. If they can find another legit number one option to go kind of maybe step into Stephon Diggs' shoes in the next couple of years, that'll be really big for them. Gabe Davis you just never really know what you're getting with Gabe Davis, but I'm excited to see what the Buffalo Bills offense can do this year for sure.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Super Bowl picks.
Well,
What do you got?
I'll let you start.
All right, well, you just talked about it. If you told me to rank 32 teams right now, preseason, tomorrow is opening day, give me your 10 best teams. In no order, I would have Philadelphia and San Francisco from the NFC, but then I would have 8 teams from the AFC. I think it's that big of a disparity. I think if you have a healthy Brock Purdy performing, Philadelphia and San Francisco are just in another tier in the NFC. I don't think Dallas is in that tier yet. I really don't think any team from the North is in that tier. Clearly no team from the South. You could argue maybe Seattle, Dallas. I just don't see it. I think those are the 2 teams. So I think you got to go Philly or San Fran. And I just believe right now, with the difference at quarterback, because Brock Purdy's good, but we've got to see him win some games and not just not lose them. So I'm taking Philadelphia to go back to the Super Bowl, but I've got them losing again. And I've got them losing to the Buffalo Bills.
Oof.
And I've got 2 predictions with the Buffalo Bills making it, because you've got the Chiefs, you've got the Bengals, the Ravens are stacking up, the Dolphins are stacking up, the Jets are stacking up, Jacksonville, the Chargers, the AFC is just loaded. I would not be surprised if any of those teams went to the championship. But Von Miller is going to start the season injured and not playing. But when he comes back, do not forget the impact that he makes on every team that he plays with. When he was healthy for the Bills, that defense was absolutely disgusting. And what I believe the Bills will do, because I'm a big believer in James Cook, I love that most improved player. I think he's going to have a good year. Look for Buffalo before the trade deadline to trade for another receiver. And if they get another big receiver to put on the opposite end of Stephon Diggs and a healthy Von Miller, Buffalo is going to be a tough team to beat. So I've got Buffalo over Philadelphia in the Super Bowl.
So there's a couple guys that actually they might be on their way out of Tampa Bay that would be look pretty dirty in bright blue.
Those were actually 2 names that I would definitely could see going, either Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I agree with you 100% on the NFC side. I think there's 2 teams that are pretty clear cut above the rest. But I do believe in Brock Purdy, and I believe in that head in Kyle Shanahan just a little bit more than Nick Sirianni. That guy is just a genius when it comes to game planning. So I'm gonna go with the 49ers. Not to mention they did take Hargrave from the Eagles onto their defensive line. Paid a lot of money to him. So I think they're gonna squeeze through. And in the last 2 or 3 years, there's only been one guy that's been able to beat Patrick Mahomes. And that's cool Joe Burrow, baby. So I think he's going to finally get back. He's going to get to his second Super Bowl. I understand that they lost in the AFC Championship, but Joe Burrow has had Patrick Mahomes' number the last couple of years when they did play. So I think the Bengals they're primed and ready to go again this year. So I'm going to take Niners and Bengals. I'm going to go against the mentalist. And I'm not going to ruin that for you. I'll let you watch Hard Knocks, and we'll see. You can see what he had to say about the Super Bowl matchup. But I'm going to go 49ers Bengals. I'm not sure who's going to win that game, but that'll be a good one. It'll be a really good one if those two match up. Gotta pick one.
Gonna take Cool Joe.
Well, yeah, might as well.
I would not be mad at that at all.
That would be a fun one.
And I just had to look up the year. I thought it was this year, but that would be a repeat of Super Bowl 23 in 1989. I actually remember that game. Not to
Bill Welsh won, I believe, didn't he?
Yes, the 49ers with Joe Montana beat Boomer Esiason and the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually remember watching that game. My mom let me stay up all night to watch. I was 5 years old, and I got to watch the game. And I actually do remember it because I remember watching Joe Montana growing up. So
nice.
Yeah, I'm with you. I could see Cincinnati winning the Super Bowl for sure.
Yep. Well, one last prediction here, and then we'll call it quits for a good episode number 1 of the 2023-2024 football season. We need a prediction for next week, your player of the week.
Yeah, I thought about this, and there's just so many question marks out there with a lot of injuries and everything going on. Man, I really didn't even pick a guy. I've got a top 3. So if you wanna choose first,
All right.
let me look at some more projections to pick because I was actually trying to pick maybe a quarterback, but I feel like that's such a cop out.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take that cop out, and I'm going to take a guy with a brand new offensive coordinator, a bunch of brand new wide receivers, a whole brand new look, just kind of a brand new, but there's some good players coming back, but it's going to be a new look offense. He just got a massive payday, and he is going to come back, and I think he's going to come back hungry. Not to mention they're playing one of the worst teams this year in the Houston Texans. I'm going to take Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to run all over the Texans, and I think he's going to put up another. I think he's going to put up another 350 yards passing, and we might get to see Zay Flowers and OBJ's first touchdowns as Ravens this weekend.
Yeah, that's a great pick. The guy that I was thinking was Jalen Hurts against New England. But it's such a cop out. I hate you know what? This team is getting a lot of the New Orleans Saints are getting a lot of props right now. But I think it's just because of the weak division, and I really don't think Derek Carr is really going to make them that much better of a team. Obviously, it's a huge upgrade over the quarterbacks they had last year. But week 1, until I see him fall off, I'm going to put the crown on and say the King is going to have a day against the Saints. I'm going to say 150 total yards because I do believe Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb are going to get more involved in the passing game this year. I'm going to take Derrick Henry 150 total yards, 2 total touchdowns, and I will go along with that as my upset pick with the Titans over the Saints. So I'm gonna ride Derrick Henry in week 1.
All right, fair enough. As long as Cameron Hayward doesn't shut him down, I guess, right?
Yeah. All right. Any bold predictions for you, Nick? That was one of my favorite segments last year. For those viewers who watched last year, we did not have very good bold predictions for any of our guests. So my bold prediction, while you think about that, I'm going to pick Nick Chubb to finish the season as RB1 in fantasy. He has never finished higher than 6th in PPR. So even though people might be like, that's an easy pick, that's not that bold, it actually is, because in PPR, he has finished as RB 17, 8, 11, 13, and 6. If they include him more in the passing game this year, which I believe they will, I will say that Nick Chubb is going to finish as RB1 this year.
Oh, this is tough. Oh, I should have prepared myself for this one. Damn.
And while you're thinking, again, to our viewers, in the comments below, make sure you put your Super Bowl picks and your bold predictions. I'm going to pick my favorite bold prediction this next week. We will announce the winner on week 2's podcast. And then we also want to get your Super Bowl predictions. And if anyone picks the matchup and the winner right, we'll have another prize at the end of the year for that viewer. So let's see your bold predictions in the comments. Who do you got, Nick?
Well, I was kind of going all over the place here, but maybe a guy that we kind of did the double thumbs down this year. I think, I don't know if I want to say it. Oh man, I should have. Oh, I know I can do better though. But if we're just doing bold predictions, it's just a bold prediction.
Got to be bold.
I'm gonna say Justin Fields is gonna. I'll say Justin Fields is gonna be the MVP. That's gonna be my bold one. I think he's gonna go crazy and with running the. I mean, shit. If that guy would have played the second half all year long, I don't know if it would have been any question. I think he might, and especially being on a bad team. I think he could have easily won the MVP last year.
Talking
So
fantasy MVP or NFL league MVP?
no, I think that he could. I mean, I understand that even if you don't win a bunch of games, but if you would have like right after, remember when you picked him up and then traded him, that's when he kind of went to the moon, right? Like imagine if he put a whole season together that with the stats that he had. He only played well the second half. I think he still ended up as the sixth best fantasy quarterback in football. So, I mean, if he puts a whole season together and he has DJ Moore, I think there's a legitimate chance with his running ability, and not to mention his offensive line's bad, so he's going to be running and hucking it down the field. That's going to be my bold prediction. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not glad about it. I'm not happy about it. It's a Chicago Bear and a Buckeye all at the same time, but I think there's some potential there.
Yeah, he did finish as QB6. Like you said, did not play a full season, at least not well. And if he wins MVP, that means that Chicago will have won the North and most likely finished 10-7, 11-6. And if they go 10-7, 11-6, Justin Fields is going to be the reason why.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Well,
I hope that doesn't happen because he's Chicago, he's Ohio State, and he's on Stu's roster. So
yes, I'm sure we put out a few good bold predictions. I'm sure we'll have to touch on that. We'll have to come back to that in a few more weeks and see once the kind of the season starts, kind of, when we kind of have a better grasp on things. But I guess if we're going bold,
go bold. Final score prediction, Green Bay, before we sign off.
I really do think that we're going to sneak this one out. But I'm gonna say 24-21 Green Bay.
Yep, 26-24 Green Bay. Going to kick a field goal with under a minute left to win.
Well, as long as Anders can make a field goal, I guess maybe we'll have a chance. Well, thanks, Dan, for coming on. Thanks for coming. We are officially underway of season 2 here. And looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this whole football season. I've been dying to get football back in my life. So I'm glad that it's starting tomorrow, and let's have some fun, baby.
Let's go. Go Pack, go.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.